This conference will now be recorded.
All right, Kurt. I'm gonna say your name wrong.
Zauer.
Kurt Zauer.
There you
Goodness
go.
gracious. How are you doing?
All right, Elijah, what's going on? What's the latest?
Well, so we brought you on to really just to find out not only about your work and I'm really curious about kind of your end of things as far as writing comics. What does that look like? How did you get into this? Do you like? Are you out of your mind?
Yeah,
Like,
I think everybody starts, not knowing what they're doing, and
right.
I'm just coming out of the tail end of that. I think I still don't quite know what I'm doing, but I'm learning and I'm getting better with every script, and I've found, I think, an editor that is, if I could go back, whatever,
Mm,
5 or 6 years, I would tell myself, pay that extra money for a decent
mm.
editor. They're going to make your story better. So I think I've discovered that now, and I'm just about coming out of that point where I don't know what I'm doing anymore.
How did you find
So
that editor? How did you connect up with that, or what did that look like?
I did a bunch of searching online. I was looking on Fiverr. I was looking on
Mm,
what's the other one? Upwork.com. I used different editors here and there. But honestly, the one I found and settled with, I found on Facebook, Chuck Pinow. He's pretty well known in kind of the underground. He's done a few Kickstarters himself, and
Okay.
he's kind of built a name for himself, I think. And I thought, why not? We'll give it a shot. We'll try him as an editor. And I gave him a script, a really long, probably like a 48-page script, and for a new title that I'm adding to my universe, so to speak. And he really gave me some great suggestions, and he's going to help me make my story better. So it's been fun. I just finished the second
Like,
draft, which he's looking at right now. Yes,
is that
that's issue 3 of my story, right? But this is actually it's called Ruxy Vampire. It's going to be a part
uh,
of that universe, whereas that Spectrus and Sabanian is about an ancient Egyptian ghost. In the modern times, this is going to be about a vampire that wakes up in Prohibition era Chicago. So,
okay?
and kind of gets caught up in the glamour, glitz, and violence of gangland Chicago.
That
So
sounds
we'll see
awesome.
how that goes.
That sounds really cool. Do you so I get tons of questions kind of pop up with that. I, what's your kind of your how did you get into horror, or has it always sort of been there with you in terms of horror? And because it seems
Um,
like, and just like your website and other things just really seem to be in and around those kind of themes of, I don't know, horror. Like
yeah,
I guess
yeah. I don't know. You know what? That's a good question. It's just something I've always kind of gravitated to, kind of the darker side of things. I enjoy the supernatural and the undead, and I like main characters that shouldn't be main characters. My Inspectress and Sabanian, the main characters are ghosts that can possess people. I like the idea of the anti-hero, not necessarily always a nasty anti-hero, but kind of a different idea.
not
Not the.
Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
All right, right. No, I'm not a slasher guy. I'm more of a supernatural guy, definitely.
Okay. Not like
Yeah,
your Rob Zombie or
yeah. No, no. The gore I'm not into except on occasion, but I kind of like the Ring and the
Mm,
more of the supernatural type horror stories. So
Do you find that it is difficult as far as like what I guess maybe where this question is going is how do you go about in your process of writing, and or that maybe back when you're like, I guess with the horror too, going back to where you were when you were a kid. I mean, because that was written on kind of your about side of your page as far as just, you know, the Marvel DC, like we've all sort of have been sort of these influences, but where does kind of the supernatural come in, or before we jump into how you end up writing or that sort of thing?
okay. Honestly, growing up, since I was a kid, I've always been into Dungeons and Dragons and role playing. And honestly, that's kind of where I think my taste for stories came from.
Oh yeah.
You know, you can't play a role playing game without creating a character or developing a story, having things go on and things happen and having a narrative and those kinds of things. So and for me, the cool stuff was always the supernatural nasties. So I don't know. It's just me. It's just what I liked. My friends always would roll their eyes at me and what's your idea this time? It's something creepy, and I'm not it's bizarre to me because it's just what I like, and I'm not a creepy person.
No. No, I somehow
I don't
I remember.
identify as a creepy person, but it's just something. It's just what I've always gravitated to. I don't know why, so that's just the way it is.
Did you have like a Dungeon Dragon set when you were a kid or that sort of thing? Because my grandmother, somehow I convinced my grandmother to buy some sort of like just like starter Dungeon and Dragons kit or whatever. And
Yeah, what did you get, the board game or the
yeah,
book?
yeah, the board game, and then the obsession of going to the local bookstore, that sort of thing, and going to the nerd section and
There you go.
looking
Yeah.
at all the dice rolls and whatever.
Right. No, it's good times. It's fun. It's I don't know, like since fifth grade, I grew up during the whole, satanic panic thing. So one of my teachers snatched away my grade school teacher snatched away one of my books at one time and said, this is gonna corrupt you, young man. Now, of course, that had the exact opposite effect.
No, it makes
It typically
curiosity.
does.
No,
Yeah. So, and I had a ring of friends that were all into it too. So we just had a great time. And we're all old now, and we still play. So it's just the way it goes. And we're okay with that.
Not sure how that all happened. I'm like, you just, the older you get, you're just like, I still have these, like my comic book collection or whatever.
Right.
That's funny.
So how about you? What kind of got you into? Did you start young with comics and games and that kind of thing too?
Well, be like the Dungeons and Dragons sort of thing, and then with the comics, just marveling at the you got your Jack Kirby or that sort of a thing, or just marveling at the work and the illustrations and the artwork. That always blew me away, and I don't know, it was kind of like what you mentioned earlier, like, that's kind of if you do this, you're kind of venturing into Satanism or that sort of a thing, which is a completely misunderstanding of what it is or what it isn't, or where you might or might not go. But I sort of that view of like, well, if you're looking at comics or you're doing this kind of illustration or artwork, well, you're not an artist, and then B, what are you going to do with your art? You're not going to take it anywhere. You go paint a house or that sort of thing. And so it was always sort of a thing of, and I was lucky enough to have parents to kind of like, you do what you want to do. If that ultimately is going to bring you enrichment and feel that you're happy and all that sort of stuff. And long story short, I ended up doing like abstract art and all this sort of stuff. And then I end up back to my grandfather of all people. He was at my graduate art show, and it's all abstract crap. And Not to say that if you do all that abstract thing, you're cool. People
Okay, all right.
don't let me stop you. But for me, it was just he looked at it and he was just like, you know what? This is all really interesting. You should do comics. And that was his comment. And it was just like, you knucklehead, what are you talking about? Get out of here. You just, you know how you like your grandparents or whatever, your parents, they say things that with, again, like you were saying earlier, we're like, man, if I could go back 5 years, if I could go back really early on and just sort of tell myself, like, no, do what you, and he was right. He was right. After I got out of graduate school, it was just like, man, I need to go back to my love of, because stories are, they're an amazing thing, and obviously there's 1,000 ways of telling them, and then of course nowadays everybody on social media has 1,000 ways of all the opinions of, like, be it
Right,
Star
right.
Wars or Star Trek. I mean, just go on and on. But which not only just sort of makes it even more intimidating, but in a lot of ways stories are an amazing part of our culture and who we are as humanity, and what are those questions, what the hell do these things mean? So that's kind of where that all goes, and that's certainly where, like, what you were saying about your work and about your comics, about how they're, i I don't know, even if they're not even necessarily at a deep level, you're still sort of innately asking these questions of, like, be it afterlife, or what these, be it living eternally in this sort of vampire body, and what the hell
Right.
does this mean? Or is this ghost of possessing different, what the hell's going on here? I
Yeah,
don't know, that's just
exactly.
kind of where my mind goes. I don't.
Exactly. I think a part of it is it can be a lot. You know, when I write a ghost that possesses people. I mean, she's jealous of the living. You know, she's jealous of being able to have sensation and feel things and experience. You know, and you know, exertion and food and
Mm,
dance and fun and you know those things. So she, you know, for me, it's like
interesting.
it's almost like she appreciates life more than any living person ever could because she
Interesting.
doesn't have it anymore. She only experiences it very rarely. So I think you know the
Interesting.
more I've thought about it and looked at it, I think that's kind of really what she's about. So
That's interesting. Really cool. No, not to go down sort of religion sort of stuff, but from my Jewish faith sort of a thing is that heaven's, it's nice in heaven, but the action's here. And so it's kind of funny that you would say that, sort of that, like, I
yeah,
want to be able to do these things here, the action's here. And so
I know
interesting,
it.
so sort of that, of course, that Jewish faith comes out of that whole Egyptian sort of a thing, and that ancient. What are there, like, current movies or those sort of things that are, be it influence, or other past literature, or what sort of things are influencing kind of your, be it this,
Um,
your current story about Egyptian, or what it, all those sort of things.
I'm a bit of a history buff, and for me, ancient Egyptian history it is kind of the coolest. It's the most interesting for me. Um, you know, and I started years ago in Shakespeare. You know,
Mm,
Antony and Cleopatra is the
okay.
classic Shakespeare play, and then from there, you know, you get it. You know, I've always thought the old myths and the old gods of Egypt were really cool. I don't know if you remember from Dungeons and Dragons, the old deities and demigods book, and those were, you know, all my buddies, we all gravitated to a different pantheon. You know, I had my one guy, he was really into the Norse myths, and there was another guy into the Greek myths, and for me, it was always the Egyptian myths. You know, and it just always attracted me. And then, you know, I do a little reading here and there. I listen to Audible histories and things like that, and it's just fun. And there's a great book called Cleopatra: A Life that kind of looks at, you know, the last pharaoh of Egypt. You know what she went through and what she had to do. You know, ultimately
Interesting.
under the you know the the huge pressure that Rome, brought to the world at that time. She basically did the best she could, but
Yeah.
so, and that's
Interesting.
another fascinating story. Yeah, so much good stuff to mine in history for me anyway. You take little things and and then you generate a story for that. I'm sure Cleopatra considered having the Roman emperor assassinated, before he could come and conquer her country, and what kind of a mission would that be? I'm also I'm a retired National Guardsman, and imagine that mission where you send somebody on a mission and your whole country, will live or, will be free or not based on if you
Right.
accomplish that. So, and that's, for me,
Interesting.
that's the kind of thing. If you fail at something like that, boom, you're going to be a ghost. You're going to be restless. You're going to be, that task left undone. So
Yeah,
that's kind of where,
absolutely.
yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah,
No, and that's just where my mind goes in terms of, I think these are questions that I think it's weird how obviously we don't plan these things out, but it's weird how our lives almost like in a maybe it's subconscious, I don't know, where these questions like we're asking in terms of death and what does that mean, and of course what we're facing in the world around us and that sort of thing, as far as like, I mean, there's not a week that goes by that some friend or some acquaintance or whatever and has passed away. And so I think in a much deeper sense we're directly facing that right now, which is really interesting, and why I think I don't know. It's sort of funny, like as sort of like grown men, we're like, I shouldn't say it that way. It's probably just the way as far as reading comics or that sort of a thing. As far as, but it's interesting how, um, well, it's just really interesting that to ask these deeper questions as far as what does this all mean and that sort of thing. But
yeah. No, I hear you. We like comics. It's just, I don't think people understand. If you like stories, I mean, you
mhm,
can't help it. And every comic is a story. Sometimes, and just the number of, I mean, you look at X-Men and Batman and Superman and all these characters, and just uh, how convoluted the stories are now. Just because they have to keep making stories with these same characters for, you know, uh,
50
what?
years, where are
Yeah,
we at now?
right.
50,
So how
70
do you?
years now for
Yeah,
like
exactly.
Superman.
So how do you keep doing that? And my hats. I read X-Men and just I could never do this. It's just the just so crazy, these stories. But my hats off to the writers that can do something that intricate and that crazy. So, but no, I hear you. There's so many terrible things going on right now. It's no fun, and we're cooped up, and but stories are an escape from that. Temporary, but still, you still need it. So.
Oh yeah. Do you see your work ever, or are you interested? Is it just writing scripts for comics, or are you thinking about other areas, or is it just primarily comics right now? Or I mean,
Yeah, I mean, it would be my dream. You hear a lot of people, an awesome animated series on Netflix or something like that, and I think for me that would be the best medium for my stories. But yeah, no, I think about that. I've done a little bit of research into screenplays. I read Save the Cat, and but for right now, yeah, it's comics. I have a lot of fun doing comics, but I'm still kind of building. Once I build that fan base of people that are interested, I get the word out. Then maybe I think a little bigger. We'll see. I don't know.
do you find that very like, as far as how do you build your fan base and that sort of thing? What sort of, because that's something that like regardless of whatever your art form is, it's like, how do we, and we're fairly small time, we're just here, we are trying to figure it out too, but what sort of things are you doing that have you have found helpful to reach out or
For
find
me,
some
it's
of those?
been, well, yeah, like we met at a show. I enjoy doing conventions, it gets me out of the house, gets me to meet people, and I really prefer that to social media. I'm trying to get, I try to get more savvy on social media, which is what you have to do now. But I don't
Yeah.
know, for me, I have a hard time thinking of things to say. But yeah, it's I like conventions. You meet people, you get their email address, you build your
Mm.
email list. Um, and I did a bit of advertising on Facebook for a while, although now Facebook, so much is changing now. It's hard to, I don't know, I haven't done any ads yet or recently on Facebook. I don't know if it'd still be an effective tool, but I would, run some ads on there, get a free issue digitally in exchange for
Mm-hmm.
your email address, and then build my build my roster in Mailchimp. And I think I'm about 375 right now,
Nice.
which is not bad. I want to keep growing it, and but for now, it's mostly conventions and Kickstarters. Every Kickstarter, I get a new batch of people added to my list as well. So.
For sure. No, that because you're using their. That's one of the nice things about, especially when you're starting out or that sort of thing, using some of those platforms, be it Indiegogo, Kickstarter, or any of the
Yeah,
others, because then you can piggyback off of their algorithm and those sort of things, and certainly, like you said, getting those emails as far as a direct way of connecting with people. No, that's something really, really, really good. Because you brought up earlier as far as the social media, you open up, be it the godforsaken Twitter
yeah,
or that sort of thing, and you open it up and you're looking at it like, man, if I do my emotional, and which is what it's built and designed to like feed your emotions and then respond back emotionally, and then you're like, oh geez, can I take this back or that sort of
yeah,
thing.
exactly. Is it
It feels a
is,
little
is it
bit.
more trouble than it's worth? I don't know. You get onto Twitter and you just I don't know if the legions of
what
Twitter people are gonna pile on top of you or
what
not.
social media are you doing? Because Twitter was one of them, or are you still doing it, or are you?
I mostly use Instagram. Probably that one's my favorite, and then also Facebook. Yeah.
Are you as far because you're just posting up your like be it artwork from the comic and those sort of things. Are you how do you I guess this is one big question. A lot of from especially from the illustration end, be it colorists, be it inkers, pencilers, all those sort of things, letters, et cetera, et cetera. How are you, first question is, how are you connecting with those types of individuals? Be it just at conventions, or is there like a specific place that you're going, be it on the web? That's definitely a question that I get from time to time. I'm curious
Mostly,
how
yeah,
you would.
mostly conventions. I
They're almost impromptu interviews in a lot of ways.
Yeah, yeah, and it's really easy to just walk in front of a table and peruse the art and say, hey, this looks like it would fit my story. That's how my very first 10 pages, my very first black and white issue, I met the artist at C2E2, and I just gave him my pitch. Hey, this is my idea, and he's like, yeah, that sounds cool. Let's do it. Um, so that's
Is it
and
this
then
one?
my pardon me.
Is it this
Yeah,
one?
yeah. Sajjad Shah, really
The
great guy.
artwork
Really,
is awesome
yeah,
on this one.
yeah. That's he's pretty amazing. He's done some covers for Valiant and but yeah, his Instagram too
Yeah,
is
yeah,
pretty
stuff like
amazing.
that. Just
Yeah, yeah.
love the ink work, all that sort of stuff. Yeah, good stuff. Really cool stuff.
And same thing with my interior artist for the color issues. Topper, really super guy, loves to work. Does not leave me alone until I give him the next script. So so I really appreciate him. He's just hungry and he loves to work. So I met him at a show in Northern Illinois here, and we clicked very well. And and he does great work for me, and we have a great time together. So, uh, but covers, I mean, covers are just like icing on the cake. You know, there's so much fun, and there's so much variety out there. I do a lot of looking on ArtStation.com for
Yep.
cover artists.
Love that
Yeah,
site.
yeah, that's a great site, and you can find so much cool stuff out there. So for Ruxy, for my vampire story, I've got 2 artists that I found on ArtStation that are working on covers for me for that too. So yeah, a little bit of everything, mostly in person at conventions, but also also on ArtStation and Maud Park, another one of my cover artists. She was very slick. She backed one of my first Kickstarter and said, "Hey, check out my Facebook." And I looked at her. She did this amazing samurai version of an X-Men character. I can't remember the young archer character. I can't remember now, but
It's okay.
yeah, but it blew me away, and I'm like, boom, you're hired. So she's done covers
Cool.
for me and now she's going to do the interior art for me for Ruxy Vampire. So yeah, I've been lucky. I've been lucky that way.
Well, the one thing you pointed out I thought was that because building those relationships and that they actually are relationships and not just sort of like a business, straight up business transaction type of a thing. And that's one thing is like as artists in particular, it's just sort of let me hunker down in my hole and do my thing. And that's certainly where like the conventions and of course I think that's one of the cool things about conventions. You just get all shapes and sizes and colors and varieties and whatever possibly you can think of in terms of humanity showing up at the conventions.
Oh yeah.
Which is awesome. And in sort of a thing of just being able to connect with those individuals and just to say, hey, and start up those relationships. Because like, it was maybe about 3 years ago, I met you and ran into your work and at a convention. And of course, it's just one of these things where you never know where those ultimately might lead and where what could happen. And because it, in a sense, really does make sort of a small community out of it, which is really, 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 really cool.
Yeah, and it's what makes it so fun too, honestly, because you never know. You never know what. Yeah, it's a good time.
Oh, very cool. Do you so you talked about you're working on a vampire, I guess. Let me back up back to the script sort of, right? Is there like a process that you go through? So you have what's that process look like? Do you have like the art in mind prior, or do you collaborate, kind of go back and forth with the artist in terms of the penciler? What's that look like?
Generally, I do a sticky note. I pretty much have I know my start point and I know my end point for every issue. So and then it's just a matter of filling in the story in between. And I like to jot down plot points and action points and things like that on stickies, and then I throw them all up on the mirror in my room here, and I kind of shift them around, and that's kind of where I develop the overall flow of the issue on the sticky notes. So
okay.
And then I've got issue 5 and 6 up there right now. I don't know if you'll see this or not. You probably.
Oh yeah.
So they're up there right now.
Uh-huh.
And so from there, I started the script for issue 5, and like I said, Topper is banging on my door. He wants it's so cool. I mean, the guy loves to work. He loves to create art, and he'll do 11 by 17s for me. He's like, hey, what do you think of this? I'm like, wow, that's freaking cool. I didn't even ask for that, but I'll take it. What should we do with this? Should we do a poster? Should we do a, so the guy loves to work, and I'm just really lucky to have found him. But yeah, he's banging on my door for issue 5, and I got about 4 or 5 pages. I could probably send him that first scene, and he can get going on that. But usually, so he likes. But from there, it's really so he likes bigger, bolder panels. Um, so for me, I'll write a page with 6 or 7 panels on it, and then he's like, well, I'll give you 4. So from there, there's a lot of give and take there, and he's a kind of a big, bold panel kind of guy. So now that we've kind of figured each other out, I try to write more to that.
Okay.
To his preferences that way, and the things that he likes to do and how he likes to lay things out. So basically it's the plot points on the mirror, and then from there I script it out, and then he wants it right away, even though it hasn't gone to the editor yet. So sometimes that makes me nervous, because he'll get cranking on it like right away, and then well, the editor wants me to change all this, so now but he hasn't complained, not once at all. So, but like I said, he's hungry. He likes to work, so I'm real lucky that way.
So that give and take sort of thing, talk a little bit more about that sort of thing, as far as so he'll design maybe a panel or that sort of thing within the page structure, and then it could be very different or just a little different as far as what you were anticipating, or or you give it pretty structured notes, or in terms of, because you were just saying based upon sort of getting to know his personality and his strengths and all those sort of things too, as far as a writer, because then again your capabilities of how to depict, or it's sort of a thing of I guess from a movie standpoint, you spend all your time on one of this big long shot that's almost sort of in terms of a budget of time. It could take a lot if there's a ton of people in it, which from an artist standpoint, it can be a sort of a okay, compositionally and all these sort of things. So to talk a little bit about that, as far as how you go about that kind of thing.
It's funny you mentioned that. He's actually pushed me to, he's like, okay, so we've done these first 2 issues. Let's do some splash pages. I want to do a 2-page splash. I want to do some 1-page splashes. I'm like, oh, cool, let's do it. So that has, in my script for issue 4, which is in, well, it's done, and it's being colored right now. So that I really started to work a lot more with splashes. There's a really cool, I think there's 2 really cool 2-page splashes in there, and like I said, he loves big, bold, detailed pages. So that's his bread and butter. He does theme park design full time. So
that's awesome.
Yeah. So it works well. So he wants to do, so he's like, let's do a big, Egyptian panorama. I'm like, boom, let's do that. So yeah, I've got a really cool, page 2 and 3 is a big panorama of the Romans coming to Alexandria, to basically tell Cleopatra, hey, you belong to us now. So, and then there's another one later in the story, which is a bit of, origin or backstory to Sabanian and Spectrus. So yeah, he's actually, so he's pushed me a little bit. Hey, I want to do bigger. Like I said, he likes the big, bold stuff. So he's like, let's do that. And really with the script, when he reduces my panel counts on a page, sometimes he does, sometimes not. And then from there, I generate the lettering script, basically. So once he's completed the art, I go back to the script and I basically rescript.
Completed a type pencil, or just sort of fairly roughed out, or what stage does that generally happen?
No, mostly when he's got tight pencils done, when he's got the pencils done. You know, because basically he passes a page to me. Hey, this is the rough for page 3.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think? And I kind of look at it. Yeah, that looks good, or maybe tweak this, and then he'll give me the pencils, and then I might make a few other small tweaks there. But then when the pages are locked in at the very end, then I basically re-script it based on the new panels that he's done, the new action that he's done, and there are a few changes here and there, and that doesn't really bother me. So because you know his you know I'm flexible
Well,
that way.
it's a part of the creative process of
Right,
that,
right.
or that team. I don't know. I guess maybe equivalent might be sort of that writer's room working with the storyboarders or that sort of thing, and like, oh, I never thought about it from this camera angle or that sort of a thing, and then kind of going from there.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, I'll re-script and re-letter it, you know, basically, and before I send it off to the letterer, and it works. It's worked well so far. So.
That's cool. Do you so after it goes to, tell me that the process from the editor end of things, as far as, so you after you've kind of reworked it a little bit based upon his sort of development from into type pencil and that sort of thing, are you then sending it on to the editor? And then talk a little bit about that process of that.
Well, this time around, for Spectrus and Sabanian, I haven't had as heavy involvement with the editor in that on those books.
Okay.
I think now I'm working with Chuck. He's done great things for my Ruxy Vampire story, so I think I'm going to bring him in for my Spectrus and Sabanian stories as well. So that's kind of a new process. So right now I've completed draft number 2 for Ruxy Vampire, and Chuck's reviewing that. He's still looking at that. It's a little big. It got to be huge. It's like 52 pages. So he's still looking at it. And I said, you know what, we should just tell me where to break it, you know, into 2 books. He's like, no. Do the whole thing. I was like, I'm cranking up the page count here, you know. Where should I cut it? He's like, just do the whole thing. So I'm going to have a 52-page issue number 1 for Ruxy Vampire. So that's going to take longer than I expected, but you know, I'm not in any huge hurry. I want it to be as good as it can.
How many drafts do you usually go through? Or
well, this is draft 2. I got to hear back and see what he says. Like I said, my first 2 books, Spectrus and Sabanian, and the preview issue, I didn't use an editor at all. Issue number 3, I found someone on Fiverr, and I got some good feedback, but not kind of not the brutal, honestly, the brutal feedback that I needed, that Chuck's given me.
Well, and also that trust as well. That
right, and that's kind of what I needed. You know, I need to know, hey, what's the motivation here? Why would this person do this? Or why would they ask her to do this? You know, and I'm like, yes, you're right. So you need that good editor that just won't, you know, oh, it's great, and blow out a lot of smoke. You know, you send something to your friends, and they say, oh, it's great, you know, which is nice. But you gotta find that person that's gonna be honest and critical with you and make your story better. So
no, I help find those little plot holes or those sort of things. If like, man, I didn't even, like you might bring up you know, it might be just sort of like an initial sort of thought that you had when a character says this or does this, but then, you know, that, for example, like I just sharing my story and that sort of thing with my kids, she's like, oh, what about this character doing this? I want to know more about what does this
Uh,
mean in the
yeah,
connection of
yeah,
these
yeah.
two characters coming together, and what's that mean, or what's happening here? Where did that start? Or and then that course sends you down the path of like, okay, is that something worth exploring? Is that, should I just leave it as kind of that sort of idea on the shelf, and we just sort of, our imagination sort of fills in? And that's kind of the wonderful thing about comics, as far as like, we're not necessarily, what blanks in the sentence are we filling in other words, if that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, though that second set of eyes and wow, maybe kids would be more straight up and honest with you. It sounds like they would be. That's interesting. I hadn't thought of that. But yeah, hey Dad, what's going on here?
All
That's kind
right,
of
all
what you
right.
need. That's what you need
Yeah,
from your editor. Like what the
yeah.
heck?
Do you, have you looked into, I'm sure you have, but if you haven't, no big deal. If you looked into like Joseph Campbell or those sort of things, and kind of his philosophy as storytelling, like the hero's journey, or that sort of a thing, how
Yeah,
does, do you use the hero's journey, or you're like, that's, or do you, where does that fit in, or those sort of things, or?
I think I think I read that so long ago, but that's funny. I should reread that. I should look at that again. But I think almost instinctively, if a person has read a lot of comics and read a lot of stories, watched a lot of movies, I think almost
Mm,
instinctively, you have your character arcs. They start at a certain place, they go somewhere, they discover new things. Um, and for me, it's hard. How do I take this ghost that's lived for 2,000 years? How do I make her discover something new? And
mm,
so it's boom, she's going to take a human identity. She's going to pass herself off as human. She has to remember all these things and try to to find purpose in her life. Try to
uh,
feign life again, and how would she do that? Um, and in the beginning of the story, she does it very um, kind of destructively and kind of not thinking about the repercussions of what she's doing. So
for
there's the,
sure.
there's that point that she's going to learn in the future. Um, but yeah, I think almost instinctively people like writers and people that create stories, you just it's something that you kind of do. You
No,
know,
yeah, for sure. Because that was one thing that like, obviously stories can be written. I mean, we could be both given sort of the same project, if you will, but then end up in entirely different places because
yeah,
of,
yeah,
be it
yeah.
our experiences and those sort of things, and other ideas that kind of come to mind. Um, if when you're going through in writing your work, is there, be it a particular authors that you're looking at, or that sort of thing, that are influencing your work, or like, be it like Lord of the Rings, Stephen King? I mean, these are just low hanging fruit, but are there like certain authors that you're looking at that kind of are, or do you pretty much, do you just stay away from, like, when you're in the kind of in that writing mode, do you just kind of like, okay, that's in the rearview mirror at the moment, and just focusing in on the topic? Or
It's funny.
it's always kind of the debate between like, oh, you need to be like in the moment, like in the moment of whatever material you're writing, versus so you don't let other influences come in, but then at the same time it's,
Yeah, no, it's kind of it's a difficult question. I have writers that I like, but I can't. I really like Kieran Gillen and Cullen
okay.
Bunn. They're some of my favorite, and Al Ewing with Immortal Hulk just recently, and the Hickman X-Men books have been amazing.
Uh-huh.
But I, and of course Alan Moore but I don't know if I'm good enough to say that I'm following their style, or I write like Kieran Gillen or he, and I but I think I get like you say, moods and pieces of you know, snippets pop into my head, you know, and maybe there's a little bit of Stephen King in there. Maybe there's a little bit of, you know, sometimes I think Hellraiser and you know, there are little snippets here and there. And with my vampire gangster story, you know, there are little snippets of The Godfather in there and
No, that's a
you know,
classic.
right, little gangster movies and so it's hard to say that there's a writer that's influenced me, you know. So
Yeah, yeah.
I don't want to
Um,
say, yeah. And then,
no, you're fine. No, because it's doing this stuff. It's because you're doing this part time, or you're so you because you have like a day job and that sort of thing and
right,
that sort of
right,
thing, right?
yeah.
So how are you balancing that as well as far as
A lot of
late
I'm
nights?
yeah, I'm really a night person. So when I can't sleep, I'll get out of bed and crank out a page or two, you know. Um, and
Do you
weekends,
handwrite it first, or do you just go straight to the computer and just
you know, a little bit of both. I'll write out scenes. I'll crank them out on a notebook, and then whittle them down and then put them on, and then type them up. Uh, Sometimes when I really want to get serious, I'll take my laptop. I'll go to the library just to have, you know, no distractions, and that's like my ideal way to get things done. But you know, the library's not always open, and
mm,
you know, I've got things at home that need doing. So I'm not quite at that point where I can, you know, do it full time yet. But who knows? We'll
yeah,
see.
for sure. But
Yeah,
your crowdfunding is it seems like each iteration that when I was looking at your previous, each one seems to be getting better and better, which is really, really exciting. And who knows where that might lead for. That's really exciting for you. That's cool, man.
it is. I've been so lucky. Yeah, just you know, increments, like you say, baby steps. You know, and then issue 4 will probably be out within a month or two, and then Ruxy Vampire, hopefully, the art will be done by that time. So yeah, I really want this to be a big year um, for Kickstarter and you know, and doing shows, and
For
so yeah,
sure.
I've got a lot of ambition for this year. We'll see how it works out. Usually all the things I want to do in a year's time don't
I
work out,
know.
but that's okay. There's always time, you know.
For sure.
Sometimes it takes a little longer than you want, but that's fine. You get it done
For
anyway.
sure. So, because that bring interesting brought that up because balancing your time as far as like okay, I mean, and then giving yourself that grace of like, well, you know, if I don't get it done, then you know it is what it is based upon all the other responsibilities that you have. But then maintaining those relationships in particular of growing your this idea are and like you said, who knows where this will ultimately lead for you. Is there, I mean, someone that is thinking about doing, be it the artwork, be it the writing, would there be any sort of a thing, again, like you were saying at the very beginning, man, if I could tell myself this, like, do these 5 things, like, you
Oh,
have to. It
like I
doesn't have to
say,
be
get it.
5, but you know what I mean.
Okay. Well, again, as a you know, I'm at a disadvantage because I can't draw to save my life. So if you're gonna just write, you know, be prepared. Uh, Comics are expensive when you can't draw, right? So the artist gets paid and the writer does not until you know the Kickstarter or you get to the conventions and those things. So
Having
um,
a budget.
right, right, be ready for that. But but like I said, don't skimp on the editor. Um,
Mm,
what's funny is my first probably 2 issues, I've already got things twirling around in my head about how I'm going to rewrite those. I'll probably get them rewritten, relettered for the trade paperback. Once I finish issue 6 and have the full story arc, I'll probably release that in a trade, and I'm going to get those first 2 issues relettered. I'm gonna revamp it a bit.
Nice.
Because I didn't have that editorial advice, tapping me on the shoulder and saying, hey, this doesn't make any sense, or hey, maybe cut this, cut your words down, just tighten it up. So yeah, like I say, comics are expensive if you're just a writer, and then but kick in that little extra for a good editor. But and don't and keep an eye out for good artists. Collect it. People still use business cards. I've got a whole bag full of them here. Yours is in there too, and just keep your options open.
Yeah.
It might take you a while to find that artist for your story.
Yeah.
Because they've got to, number one, they got to have the talent, and number two, you got to be able to work with them. You got to have a decent relationship. You got to have, someone you can give and take with. So
Again, that trust and all that sort of stuff too, as far as like knowing that, okay, like you said, your art penciler and inker and that sort of thing, knowing that, okay, the outcome is it's going to happen, and it's going to happen when the expectation is, and those sort of things. And which again, back to that relationship of the importance of, I guess what I'm trying to say, the importance of setting those expectations and being on the same page, and to be able to, again, have that give and take, like you were saying, like that to be able to go back and forth
yeah, definitely. You got to find someone you can work with, and it's fun. It's got to be fun, Otherwise, what's the point, So yeah.
Cool. Well, I really look forward to. So, what's next? So, do we have time frames, or is it just all sort of soon TM, or what's be it conventions? Kind of what's on your next the next few months, or that sort of a thing?
Yeah. So probably, let's see here. Conventions for me aren't starting up until May, where I'll be
Okay.
at Minneapolis the first
Uh-huh.
weekend of May, and
Okay.
I just applied for Motor City Comic Con in the second weekend of May.
Awesome.
Yeah. And by that time, I hope to have, fingers crossed, Spectrus and Sabanian issue number 4 kickstarted, and Ruxy Vampire, at least have the art done.
Okay.
So another issue of Spectrus and Sabanian, issue number 4, here in the next 2 months, if all goes well.
Okay.
And then, probably May, June time frame, we'll look at Ruxy Vampire, issue number 1. So it's going to be fun. Awesome. I can't wait. I can't wait. It's going to be so fun. There's going to be that little bit of crossover between Spectrus and Sabanian and Ruxy, and I hope to expand the fan base, and so we'll see. I think it'll be a good time.
That's one of those things that, like, as far as like Tolkien and what he did with like the Lord of the Rings, in terms of just developing this whole other universe, and then building stories upon stories, and then basically writing so it's like an anthology, or sort of a history book of like the Silmarillion or those sort of things.
Yeah.
Sort of whetted the appetite back to the Dungeons and Dragons of like, well, this is happening all within. I think that's one of the appeal as far as like with anime or that sort of a thing that people have, as far as they're really only stories that are all existing within this crazy universe.
You're right. I've just gotten into anime a little bit more, and it's bonkers. It's so strange, but they make it compelling. It's amazing how well it's done. Attack on Titan is the one I'm watching, and then I did Death Note for a little while, and yeah, these really bizarre concepts, but still just well done. And
Have you seen Arkin?
No, not
You
yet.
might check that out. It's really good.
Okay, Arkin. Okay.
Arkin is it's on Netflix, I believe. And it's really good. Especially because anime can be hard to get into, but then at the same time, it's not super in your face, but I think it was done by a video game company, and they ended up, making a whole, I think, was it 8 episodes? Anyway, it's really good. You might binge week that for a week. Yeah, the League of Legends. Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's amazing.
Yes.
Yeah, that's one of my favorites. Yeah. Okay, I thought it was Arcane, but
maybe it's Arcane. I can't.
Yeah.
tell you.
Yeah. No, I know what you're talking about. But yeah. No, that's amazing. Visually,
Stunning.
probably one of the most stunning pieces of animation I've ever seen. But yeah, there's a lot of great Castlevania. I don't know if you've ever seen on Netflix. Castlevania's awesome.
I remember playing that as a kid on my aunt and uncle's Mac computer.
Yeah, back in the day. Long time ago.
Oh my
Good
goodness.
times.
Did you ever play that as a
I played
back in the 80s when
I
that
don't
first
want to
came
date
out?
myself. Yeah, I played like in television and Atari. So
Yep.
yeah, it's a long time ago.
What happened? Where'd that go? Oh man. Well, it's been really good hanging out with you, Kurt, and it's really cool to hear about your work and just kind of where it's all headed and how to piece this all together. It is not. That's one of the things I've discovered. It's just it's all about the relationships and building those. I would have to say, if I would, this is my opinion, I'd put that at kind of the top of my list as far as. So I'm glad you talked about that, because it's I don't know, in particular as artists, again, from an artist point of view, it's like, I just want to do my work. Let me find a hole in the ground to do my work in, and let me don't bother me. But there's the sort of a
Leave
thing.
me alone. Yes.
Right.
Yeah, I hear you.
And that's where it's really good, like the artists that you're working with, that importance of that hunger of like, hey, come on, give me more. And even if there isn't necessarily fuel in the tank, just asking for here, what do you think about this artwork, type of a thing, and then we can worry about those details later as far as like through the crowdfunding or different things like that. And also, of any other time, I'm just kind of curious to hear your take on this, maybe, is that of any other time where, because of the internet, because of be it Kickstarter or these crowdfunding patron sort of things, I mean, it offers individuals like us to not that we wouldn't want to work with one of those like big name companies or whatever studios type of a thing, but it really does offer individuals like us a way to jump in and maybe do this part-time, or maybe do this, and who knows where that might lead them. But I'm just curious where your take is on those sort of things.
It's an exciting idea. Like I said, I grew up in high school. For me, it was always Marvel, and but then again, the stories now are so convoluted, they make your head spin. So I don't know if I could do that, but I would never say no if they said, hey, you want to write, I would do my best, that would be so exciting. But yeah, we'll see. I mean, anything's possible. It's an exciting idea. I mean, in the entertainment, that's what, entertainment industry, there's the sky's the limit. There are so many possibilities. And for me, that's just fun. I get to take the crazy ideas rolling around in my head and put them down on paper. And, who knows who might see them someday, So, and for you with your artwork and your stories, I mean, that's, the possibilities there are,
Yeah.
it's just exciting,
Yeah.
you never know.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Where can people find your work, and what's kind of your favorite place, or all those sort of things? Where can people find your work?
You can find all my stuff on kgcomics.com, CAGEY comics.com. I've got a blog there. Um, everything that I have for sale is on there. You can also find me on Facebook and Instagram. Those are probably my most used vehicles for social media. So, or they can find me at a show. My convention schedule's on the website as well.
Awesome.
So, hope to fill
Awesome.
that up a little bit more this year too.
Way cool. Well, thanks for taking the time to do this. And it's one of the passions that I'm really passionate about, is just finding ways to help other artists, and that's where like the conventions and those sort of things connect with each other, but then also find that the enthusiasm that we can actually do this, even at whatever level that might be, and if it's not necessarily sort of the gold standard of full time and making millions of dollars, those types of things.
Right.
But that
Yeah.
there are plenty of ways to get in this and get started and get rolling in it. And then the other part of it is having the just really to go for it, I guess, is what I'm also ultimately trying to say there. And so, yeah, so thank you for taking the time and connecting some of these dots.
Well, thank you so much,
Crazy.
Elijah, for remembering me and thinking about me and having me on your
Absolutely.
show. Like you said, we met 3 years ago, and here we are again. Who knew that we would be doing this, or or what comes next? So I
For
really
sure, for
appreciate
sure.
your thinking of me and remembering me for your
Oh,
show.
of course. And that's building that community. And then how do we do this? How do we go about this craziness of
Right.
actually doing this? And that business can be fun. That's the other
Yeah.
part too. It's not like sitting in accounting class, because when I was in college, I was sitting in accounting class and it was just all these crappy spreadsheets, and it was just like, what the hell am I doing here? It's just
Yeah. That's good. I mean, you're blessed to know, this is what I wanted to do. I'm coming to this late, honestly. I always focused on, making a living and a salary, and maybe not having as much fun as I could be having, or being as creative as I could be. So I'm
well,
glad.
balancing that out, finding,
Yeah.
because your day job, and I'm sure there's different stresses and those sort of things, but then being able to work on what the projects that you're working on, to not just, and it is stressful to be able, especially with like deadlines and, okay, is my crowdfund going to actually fund itself? And there's plenty of stresses there that go with that. But then that the importance of, which then also brings in the importance of that, again, the relationships and having with the patrons, helping make this possible. That, I mean, we couldn't possibly do any of this without the interconnection between, be it the community, like we are sitting, or then the other side of it too, with like the conventions and those sort of things. They're a huge part of that, the overall experience of what comics have ultimately become, which is really, I think we're sitting on a really exciting standpoint in terms of where comics is at if any other time, because of independent creators and those sort of things. But I digress.
Well, no, you're right. It is an exciting time. There's so many, with, Netflix and Amazon and, all these different potentials, So, it's a good time. I think it's a good time to be writing stories. Good time to be creative. So.
Cool. Well, we're gonna hang around, but for everybody else watching the video, thank you for watching, and thank you Kurt for hanging out and doing this again. Really appreciate it, and check out his stuff. please do. It's cool. Support it. All those sort of good things. And then, yeah, we'll see you later, guys. Bye.
Thanks, Elijah.